Welcome everybody, it's a pleasure to be here at Sangue in Milan. I start in English for all the people that are connected via Zoom. Thank you so much for being here for the presentation of Sananda Maitreya's new album, the Pegasus Project, Pegasus and the Swan. We are delighted to be in such an iconic place in Milan with a lot of friends. And ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Sananda Maitreya. Benvenuto Sananda, diamo un benvenuto anche a tutti i nostri amici ospiti qui, grazie della vostra presenza. So, finally the day has come, we are introducing your 13th project.
Yes.
Are you happy? Are you relieved?
I'm very relieved. Always for an artist, the most exciting part of making a record is making the record. So, this is the part that you hope everything goes okay.
Dice che per un artista la parte più eccitante è quella di fare un album, di suonarlo e comporlo. Quindi arrivati a questo punto si spera che vada tutto bene.
You have total control as an artist when you're making music, but once you are in these situations, you have no control at all.
Yes.
And it's like going from the cold to the hot.
Uno shock termico, thermic shock, right? Well, but we are here and we're really happy. And let's speak about the genesis of the project. How did it started? At first, especially because you said it was your project number 13, you said that you were going to do a rock pop project with 13 songs, correct?
It was, you want this question in Italiano?
Sì, loro hanno capito, they are international. No, dice 13 pezzi inizialmente, no? Visto che era l'album numero 13.
The problem is at home we speak Russian.
Yeah. Sì, a casa parliamo russo.
We are learning
to spice things up.
Next step.
Next step, yes.
So I've wanted to do a power pop album for a long time to honor some of my heroes like Todd Rundgren, Big Star, the Buzzcocks, the Ramones. I wanted to do something like this, but the problem is I kept running into this Venetian gentleman named Diego Basso, who is right here right now. Please stand up, Mr. Basso.
Il maestro Diego Basso, che dopo inviteremo a parlare qui sul palco, quindi è colpa sua se non ha fatto il progetto con 13 brani.
So to quote one of my great heroes, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
John Lennon.
Oh, Vladimir Lenin. I thought it was John Lennon. I thought it was Vladimir Lenin.
È una canzone di John Lennon.
They said.
Che canzone è?
Vladimir, what happened? So, but I've had a relationship, a working relationship with Diego Basso for over 20 years. And we've done some festivals together. And so we immediately had a rapport and a musical respect. So every 2 years, the calendar would turn and Diego Basso would call and say, hey, let's do that project together. Let's work with my orchestra. And every 2 years I would find a way to say, okay, next time. But eventually, before COVID, he called again and said, let's do this project. He said, I have a very exciting orchestra that I'm working with, and I would love for you to, let's put something together. So I said, okay, finally, but then COVID happened. So 2 years later, Diego calls again, and I realized I can't keep saying no, because at some point you realize that karma is knocking on the door. It's saying, open up, because you know that you want to do this, but you keep putting this off. So I've always, like many musicians, it's always a great privilege to work with an orchestra, and I thought that the timing was perfect when I realized that I was running out of time to say no to Diego Basso.
Sì, Diego, che è un caro amico, abbiamo avuto il piacere di conoscerlo moltissimi anni fa, suonando per il Festival Show dove Sananda ha partecipato, e poi finalmente sono riusciti a fare qualcosa con la Budapest Art Orchestra diretta da Diego Basso. Dopo ti chiederemo qualche dettaglio in più sugli elementi, eccetera. Sananda, then you decided that basically it was no longer 13 songs, obviously, but you had to also get some renditions of your post-millennium rock songs with the quartet. And you decided to call the wonderful gentlemen of the Archimia String Quartet. How did that happen?
Well, what happened was, as I was listening to, as me and my engineer, Matteo Sandri, as we were mixing the Diego Basso sessions, I realized that it had taken on its own life. And so I've always wanted to work with orchestra. I've always wanted to do some stuff specifically with chamber music quartet. So this was the perfect time to say, okay, we have the orchestra, let's now go get some quartet arrangements and do some of the songs that way. And then the other songs I would just do the way I've always done my music, which is lock myself in the studio and not come out until it's finished. And
you said once in a very recent interview that obviously in the latest years your project had been very big, extended, like the extended play of a movie, because you have a lot of inspiration. So the question is, how do you get inspired? And you once said, I want to give back to the music what music has given me in my whole life. So for me, this is this type of exercise. Can you explain this better, please?
One of the greatest privileges for any artist is to be able to contribute to their art form and to be known for making a contribution to their art form. And this is something that I take as a sacred privilege and a sacred responsibility, because it's very difficult to express with words, even if I were Shakespeare or Dante, the way music gave me the understanding of what life was and what my life was. Because I just feel like I come from another place, and that the only things that makes life on this planet worth being here is love, beauty, art, and great food, and just taking all the things that are wonderful to lift your life and building your life around those things. So this is, to understand the power of the music, I was 2 years old when I first heard the Beatles. And I have no memories before this. But the first time I heard, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. My life began. My life came into focus, and my memory came alive. So this is something so powerful that it can wake up your life and transform your life. And from the first moment I heard the Beatles, I wanted to be a part of this world.
You basically, with this project, said that you ended the trilogy that started out with your Prometheus and Pandora album in 2017, and then continued with the Pandora's Playhouse in 2021, and now in 2024, the Pegasus Project. Can you tell us a bit more about the way you see mythology? Because for you, mythology is like the Marvel movies, it's something very real, it's not something that is detached from our life.
Well, I believe, personally, I've had a connection to mythology, Sumerian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greco-Roman, Scandinavian, African. All of these mythologies I have had a connection to since I was a child, because I believe mythology is our real history, but we call it mythology because it was our history before we started writing things down. Because the nature of what you all do is, if it can't be researched and verified, it's not usually promoted. So once upon a time, our ancestors were people of the oral tradition, and they passed on their stories from generation to generation. And every generation got a chance to put itself a little bit in the story. But the truth of the story remains. So I believe we come from angel beings, or beings that we would see as like our creators, who helped us put together these civilizations. And so this is the way that we honor them, our ancestors, but it's also a way to tell a story that is a cultural language that is genetically in all of us, because these stories have been passed around since forever. So there's also the fact that the gods of mythology are psychological archetypes. Every one of them has something that we can see ourselves in that particular archetype. And it's so important that we continue our connection, that, you know, Disney, DC, comics, Marvel Universe have made their fortunes around perpetuating and updating these stories and giving them to the people of today.
You said that the inspiration came also because you feel very connected with the myth of Prometheus, and also when you will start working on your musical that you have been offered to work on, you will basically call it Prometheus and Pandora because you feel a strong connection. What about it?
Orpheus and Prometheus are the two beings that I've always had the most connection to. And you know, Prometheus was a demigod who believed he was a god because his father was a god, and his father loved his mother. And we know that love has the power to elevate our consciousness and our spirit. But to the other gods of Olympus, Prometheus was a pain in the ass. Because they wanted Prometheus to think you're only half a god, so you're not like one of us. But Prometheus' perspective was, no, I'm more, because I'm a god and I'm a man. So it gave him more range of emotion and understanding. And Prometheus' beef with the other gods is, you created this world, you created these people, and you've abandoned them. You treat them as nothing but investments for your estates, for your portfolio, and you care nothing for them. And Prometheus believed that the gods had a responsibility to what they created. The gods were like, fuck off with this kid. So eventually, the story goes that I'm promoting is, the gods go to Zeus. And we must remember that the same gods that went to Zeus were the same gods that helped Zeus overthrow his father and the Titans. So they gave Zeus an ultimatum. We know you love Prometheus. We know he's your favorite son. But you have a problem, and if you don't get rid of him, there's going to be a bigger problem. And Zeus was understood that these people, they were saying to him, it's him or us, because he doesn't belong here. And so basically the banishment of Prometheus, I feel like I lived this story because I ascended a mountain very, very fast, and it freaked a lot of people out who were on top of the mountain. And while they were adjusting to this reality, they realized that you have an integrity that really matters to you, that you want to stay connected to. So you're kind of eased off the situation because it's just more convenient for the other gods of Olympus to do without what you represent. So this is, I hope this explains
Yes.
why I am on this story. And I also would like to say that the thing about, as I write this story, as we write our stories also write us. I'm writing this story, and it's also, as I write this story, I'm also on the other side, continuing to write the chapters in my own life. So I feel like this connection, this obsession with the ancestors, with our common ancestors, with the ones who descended down the mountain and gave us life, it really does give me something to maintain this connection. And this is what I try to share with others through the music.
How much do you identify with your music?
It's very difficult to sometimes make a distinction between your life and your career. Because for me, I don't have a career. This is my life. And this is what we do. And it's a privilege, even when it's a pain in the ass. Because as I get older, I find an anxiety that I never understood before. I didn't know anxiety. It's like before I became a father, I didn't know fear. But then after I became a father, I started to understand fear and what it would mean to lose something that means so much to you. So it's very difficult to say, this is where my life ends and this is where my career begins. It's all what I have been called to do. And I don't see this as a career, I see this as a service. The same way you would work for the diplomat, the diplomatic department or the Corps or whatever. That's how I see this, and I hope that answers your question.
It's like a mission.
It feels like we're on a mission from God.
Blues Brothers.
And tell us a bit more about the songs that you did, the original 13 songs that were supposed to be the initial project, so the power rock songs. Tell us a little bit more about the narrative. There is one song that I personally love called Bondage. I know that it has a very specific meaning of also what is the meaning of this project for you?
As I was saying before, as you write your story writes you. But it's also a process of liberation. And Bondage is a song that obviously speaks to the more physical side of I used to have a friend in London. I met her at a party. This was Tanti Anifa. And she was a dominatrix. And her story was simple. She says, one day I'm coming home from the club. I'm waking up with a guy. And I realize, I really love sex. I really love guys. I can live like this. She finds a madam. Within 2 years, she says she's not having sex anymore. She's beating people. And her client list was such that she would have gotten disappeared if you knew the people that she serviced. But she said that very interesting psychology of men, because she loves men, she likes men. And she said there's always a component, all of these people are people in charge of billions or millions of dollars or thousands of employees, or the fate of nations are in their hand. And they realize that because they have so much power over others, they need the psychological and emotional balance of someone exhibiting power over them. It's a way for them to balance the psychological burden of having so much responsibility. And that's kind of what the state of our consciousness is. We go through the process in life of tying ourselves, connecting ourselves to things that are stabilizing and that are grounding for us. And eventually, the process begins of letting those things go. But the most important form of bondage is what we choose to believe. And how it's great that as we mature, we can take half the things we used to believe and go on.
So this is basically also probably a result of what you have been. You started out at the very top of the mountain, talking about the myth of Prometheus.
And now I'm here.
Stuck in Italy. And so basically you just want to do the music that makes you free. And eventually, even your very first record company, CBS and Sony, renamed all the discography to your name, Sananda Maitreya, which is no longer new because you have had this name since 1995. So what about this? This is a form of liberation?
What was the first part of the question?
No, that is basically because I just said you were talking about bondage, the fact that obviously bondage has various meanings. You did the example of your dominatrix friend, but you said that the biggest bondages are the one that we impose on ourselves in our mind. So basically, I feel that overall, in all of your path of 35 years in the music,
I was in a different situation. Most people spend a certain amount of time climbing the mountain, and then by the time they get to the mountain, they realize that, like anywhere else, it's just mainly a bunch of bullshit. That it doesn't really matter what level that you're on, you still have to trust what it is that feels right to you and work your way through this way. The blessing and my curse was having immediately seen the top of a mountain and then seeing that the reality is I just wasn't mean enough. The bottom line is it's not just about talent, it's about how ruthless, how cold, how mean, how all of these venal things that you're willing to be in order to please those people at that level that want to see you become something that is more easily for them to manipulate and control. And so for me, it was just about realizing, okay, the only thing that's really important is that people know me enough that I can express to them my music. I don't have to be the number one on the charts. I've been through all of that. And all it does is create more pressure and more energy that has less and less to do with what you are offering, what you're doing. So for me, I'm in a perfect situation because I have as many people as I need in any given moment who endorse my music. We're still all over the world. But the people that we have now, we have earned those people. And over the past 20 years, those people understand what post-millennium rock is. And it's no longer something that was kind of given to them and then taken away very swiftly. So this is the best time for not only myself to be an artist, but if you know who you are and you're willing to pay the price that we all have to pay to be ourselves in this life, then there's never been a better and more exciting time to be an artist than it is now.
Thank you so much. It's food for thoughts, definitely, and also because you mentioned it, we want to say hi to all of our friends in the different countries. We are live now with America for the very early birds, with the UK, and then with the Netherlands, with Sweden, we have and France. Let's talk about
Liechtenstein.
Yes, and Switzerland, our neighbors. Let's, before asking if somebody here wants to have a talk with you or have some question, I want to ask you about the tour. You're going to be on tour. The tour will start on June 7th from the Netherlands, and you're going to be playing in some very important festivals. So tell us a little bit more. This is going to be a retrospective of all of your music, correct?
Yes, we're going to focus initially on basically an overview of the history of, from the very beginning to this project now. We will be taking our listeners through that experience. And when we come back after festival season, where we can spend as much time as we need, then we can be more comprehensive in, this is post-millennium rock. This is what I was sacrificing for. This is what I took this path on behalf of. And now here it is. And I hope you can appreciate why I made the sacrifices that I made to be in this particular position. One thing that I'm very fortunate to realize is that I knew in my heart that I was in a very unique position, and that if I didn't take advantage of that, the opportunity to be exactly what I believe I'm bringing to the situation would never be there again. at least not through my particular filter. And like I said, I take these responsibilities seriously, and at some point, once I got my independence, I had no more excuses to not just throw myself. As the Buddha says, jump, you won't fall. And this is precisely what I trusted and what I did. So, you know, I'm just grateful to be in this part of the experience where I've gotten on the other side. Because the thing about climbing a mountain is it's different when you're climbing someone else's mountain. But when you're climbing your own mountain and you wake up and you realize you don't have to climb so hard because A, it's your mountain anyway, and B, it's not going anywhere. The good thing about your mountain is it doesn't move. So when you realize this, your vision of life changes, and you breathe more easily, and you realize that you're free from all of the constraints that normally we artists who are dealing with the commercial world, we have to deal with. And you know, you have to deal with the fact that the people that most support you might not be there in 4 months. They might be completely gone. And it might actually be because of your success that they've now gotten better offers, better deals, better situations. Now here's some new bitches looking at you, and you don't even know who they are, and they're kind of afraid of you because they don't want to be responsible for what they didn't have anything to put together. So but at the same time, you know, you get your money stolen, you go through everything. But there's another one of my great heroes, Keith Richards, said when referencing Alan Klein and the fact that he stole all of their shit. He said, that's the price of an education. And so I'm grateful that my stamina and my belief in myself allowed me to look at it from this perspective that, yeah, it's not so much that your money was stolen, you were just introduced to the business.
Welcome to rock and roll.
Welcome to the business. And, you know, at the same time, it opens your eyes, it wakes you up, and you realize what you need to do to take responsibility for your situation. So, at the end of the day, the fact that I can accept a call from Diego Basso and not have to first check with other people who may or may not think it's a good idea. Ooh, I don't know. You know, this is the beautiful part about being an artist today, is that when other artists, great artists like the Maestro Basso calls you, you can make the decision based on your love and your feeling and not based on demographics.
And since you mentioned him, let's welcome Diego Basso here, just for a quick introduction. I will translate in English. Allora, Diego, mettiti vicino a Sananda e dici 2 parole, come è stato lavorare con lui, e parlaci un po' della Budapest Art Orchestra. Benvenuto.
Grazie, buongiorno a tutti. Ogni tanto nella vita bisogna anche provare delle cose nuove, no? Io ho conosciuto Sananda e, come diceva prima Francesca, avevamo una band con un quartetto d'archi, che sono gli archi miei, che sono qua con me. Però questa voce è una voce molto, molto particolare, è una voce che ha armonici straordinari, e quindi ho pensato di proporre a Sananda di mettere questa voce insieme all'orchestra sinfonica.
In life you have to try new things. When I had the privilege of meeting for the first time Sananda, we started working together, and it was just me as an orchestra director and a band and Archimia string quartet. But then I really felt that Sananda's voice was going to be absolutely perfect for an orchestra, and so this is how the orchestral part arrived.
E quindi sono andato a trovarlo e gli ho proposto questa idea. Ma così era più un caffè che qualcosa di più concreto, no? E invece Sananda in un secondo ha detto sì, facciamo questa cosa, è bellissima questa idea. E quindi siamo partiti con questo progetto dove abbiamo messo un'orchestra sinfonica, quindi 80 elementi, una scrittura prettamente classica, sinfonica, anche se adesso comunque il pop, però comunque non c'è proprio la purezza del suono orchestrale, del suono sinfonico.
When I went to speak with Sananda, I went to his house, and I thought it was just for a coffee or just to hang out. But then I explained to him my idea, and then he immediately said, yes, let's do it now. Obviously there was a big orchestra of 80 elements, and we did an arrangement that is very classical, very pure, and this is it.
E quindi ho ascoltato le versioni originali e poi ho cercato da quelle versioni di fare una nuova versione rispettando comunque armonicamente e come stesura tutto quello che c'era. E questo è stata la sfida. Io adesso devo ancora ascoltare il progetto finale, perché Sananda lo tiene sempre giustamente, è lui che l'ha inventato, pensato, creato e cantato. Quindi sono molto curioso, no, di capire questa cosa, che abbiamo lavorato, è 2 anni che ci lavoriamo, e quindi sono curioso di capire. Adesso ho visto il CD, me lo ascolterò.
Ecco,
Per capire la voce di Sananda, è tutto quello che ho pensato, che si sposa insieme alla grande orchestra, ma sono sicuro che è successo questo, perché la sua voce, la sua musicalità, credo sia qualcosa di straordinario, e io sono onorato e felice di aver fatto questo progetto.
Grazie Diego, grazie mille. Diego said that obviously he still has to hear the performance with the orchestra, because obviously Sananda kept all of his, the suspense. Obviously today we're introducing the new project, which will be available on May 11th, and so he's very curious. He said that it was basically an honor for him to take part into this and to basically play Sananda's music with a big orchestra.
And it's, for any songwriter, it's always a great rite of passage to hear an orchestra express something you might have written, in the basement, years ago or whatever. To hear your songs go through the development stage of maturity, and to be opened out and expressed in this way is always one of the great privileges for any songwriter, to hear their music like this.
Grazie mille, se qualcuno ha delle domande dal pubblico.
Faccio in italiano così tu traduci meglio. Allora, ero curiosa intanto di questa amicizia con Luisa Corna, cioè se ci poteva approfondire un secondo. E la seconda cosa, che tipo di pubblico si aspetta di incontrare in questi festival? Grazie.
The question is about the long-time friendship you have with Luisa, who, let's say, she's one of the 2 female voices on
Yes.
on the record, and then what type of audience do you expect to see at your live performances?
The last time we were out, we were already seeing, in many cases, we were seeing 3 generations. It's always something when you see the mother, her mother, and the daughter. This is something so very wow. You have this connection with people's families in this way. So I don't really have much expectations. For me, my attitude is if 2,000 people show up, if 20,000 people show up, if 200 people show up, I'm the same. My job is to pour out the blessing that I have been given and to share it with whoever's there. But this is, the thing about Madame Louisa is also she's someone that I met a little bit around the same time as I met Diego. And she's just, I love her voice because she doesn't sound like anyone else but Louisa, and she doesn't try to sound like anyone else but Louisa. And she has this great emotional quality of really getting into underneath the song and lifting it. She has such an amazing emotional range that I really enjoyed working with her. And we have a good chemistry, and this is good, and she's now like a member of our family. And she also just got married to a much younger man. He's very, very handsome, so way to go.
It's the key to why she looks so beautiful.
Yeah, she's got it going on like
Good
this.
girl.
Yeah, she's a wonderful woman. And she, she's got it going on like this. Yeah, she's a wonderful woman. And 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 she's a he's a carabinieri, so, you know. So,
Watch out.
yeah, I have to be careful what I smoke around him. So, and Beatrice Baldacchini was someone that we met a few years ago. We really loved, excuse me, we really loved her energy. She's a very powerhouse type of performer, and she has very much experience now within theater. She was the lead in Pretty Woman, in the Italian version of Pretty Woman. She played Julia's part.
Vivian.
We wanted to work with her again because we also just like what she brings to the situation. And it also, for me, the idea was, these are my records, and I don't have to sing every song on my own records if I don't want to. So I wanted to bring in a couple people and have them share the burden, because nobody has to listen to one person sing all of these songs. So I wanted to share it, and I'm glad that I've done it in this way. Also, Madame Louisa was with me on Pandora's Playhouse. And so, yes, well, I assume we will be working together more in the future.
A recurrent presence in your life and in your recorded music. Let's remember that Sananda always, you do everything, right? You play, you write, play, perform, arrange. I'm often asked, why do you do everything yourself? I say, it fits the budget. But, you know, when I have spent years perfecting and still perfecting my craft, and for me, it's such a powerful therapy. I love to go into the studio with just my engineer and put all these puzzle pieces together that I'm hearing in my head, and standing back and going, wow, this is really cool, it's such a great experience. So it's kind of selfish, but, you know, by the time I call a bass player and say, hey, this is the part I'm hearing, I could have done it already, and I could have saved the money. I mean, you know what I mean? So I have a family now, so I think it's my responsibility to be more fiscally responsible. And there is a song called Selfish.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about it, because it's a very interesting song.
But ultimately, to finish that thought, ultimately I make music because I'm blessed to make music, and I just love it so much. And it's one of the thrills of my life that I can have some control with. Yeah, I mean, being an artist, it does require knowing when it's important to be selfish. And I think all of us sometimes can be over selfless. And we have to know when it's okay to serve ourselves. We don't only have to serve others, but when it's okay and healthy. So it's just a matter of, you know, respecting your boundaries and respecting the fact that you need boundaries, particularly if you are focused on what you're doing, because life has a way of being very distracting to people who know exactly what they want to do and they're focused on it. And sometimes it's as if life says, we'll see how serious you are. Okay, what about this? What about this? And so it's always a matter of keeping your vision forward and doing the work that you're required to do and protecting the space around you that you need to do that.
Are you happy today?
The smartest decision I ever made in my life was to ask this woman to marry me.
That was not the answer I expected, but I thank you very much.
We did it. And we last year celebrated 20 years of marriage.
We have 3 wedding rings, one each.
We went back to a season where we were married 20 years ago.
This was not the question.
This is the answer.
Interesting.
And we took our 2 boys, Francesco and Federico, there because they had not yet been to St. Francis in the church and in Assisi. And it was a wonderful experience. But I say that because it's important, and it's because, and this is very important, I grew up in Sunday school, and there's something in the Bible that says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and all of these other things will be added unto you. And the way my life interpreted that was, you serve the music. You work for and on behalf of the music. Always put the music first. Not the money, not the glamour, not the sex, drugs, and the rock and roll. But always put the music first, and the music will look after your life. The music will take care of you if you take care of what you're supposed to do. And because of my music, I have my wife. Because of this life, and because of her, I finally found the last piece that allows me to be about the music, and knowing that someone that I trust can take care of the other things, allowing me to focus on the work, because ultimately I'm about the work, and that's the most important thing.
Sananda is a workaholic. He works all the time.
About music, her.
Yes, music is a female, right? This is
Yes.
really wonderful, and if I may add for us,
And my relationship to the concept we have of God is more of a feminine earth power, because I believe that ultimately, Sono Divino, this is what it was about, is my relationship to the Mother of God is always been stronger than the relationship to God.
we have to be careful because we got married by the Bishop of Assisi, which is no longer here because he passed a few years ago. So when it's, don't say things that then may, make us feel in trouble with the Catholic religion. But obviously Sananda has a very wide understanding of religion, and it's beautiful that he sees music as his mission, as his life mission. And I have to thank you very much for being here with us today. This project is obviously, like every project, is for us a new baby, a new son, a new creature, and we're very proud. You've done an exquisite work. The arrangements are fantastic, and it's very, very interesting. So I hope you will enjoy listening to it. We have a question?
Sì.
Enzo.
Sì.
Che bravi che parlate tutti in inglese così bene, mi avete semplificato il lavoro.
Però te la faccio lo stesso in italiano.
Sì.
Allora, volevo sapere la line-up di questo retrospective tour, se non c'è Italia nelle date, non l'ho visto.
Non ancora.
Ecco, perché suona così poco, visto che vive a Milano, perché suona così poco in Italia? E poi, noi siamo di fianco al consolato americano.
Sì.
Voglio sapere se lui, have you ever missed your hometown? E soprattutto se segue le cose americane, ci sono le elezioni quest'anno del Presidente.
Allora, let's start with the last question, which is about, we are literally next door from the American consulate. If you miss your hometown, and if you follow American politics, and if you want to say something about America.
And will you vote?
And if you are voting.
The voting question I will leave untouched. But, of course, the thing about America, as you obviously know, is that it's very difficult not to pay attention to what goes on there, because they make sure that the world knows what is going on there. And our culture is so important to the layout of other cultures that, and the relationship with this country has been such as it has been for so long that you know what's going on in America. And I just feel that if the truth is that, first of all, I don't really know what my hometown is anymore. I just know that emotionally, my children were born here, their mother was born here, so I'm here. And that's good enough for me. There are a lot worse places I could have been assigned than Milano, a place whose Milanese culture has always put a high priority on art and culture and beauty. And the place is so rich with all of this energy that I've always been prolific, but I probably have never been as prolific as since I've been here in Milan. So
It's the food, probably.
yeah, probably. But it's a very. I don't really miss American culture, because what I've said before is I came to Italy so that I could live my American dream. It was becoming more difficult because of the corporate control of so much that goes on there, that and the relationship to art and art history is not the same as it is here in Europe. Because generally, unless you are making some corporation or someone a lot of money, they don't have the respect for artists. And there is no art for art's sake mentality. It's all about how it can be capitalized upon and used to further some other industries' interests. It's easier in Europe because, first of all, it's just you've got such a longer attention span or such a long history, which gives a bit of a longer attention span and a longer appreciation of the value of art and its contribution to the quality of our lives. And you know, it's in my generation. I'm 62. My generation was the last generation of children for whom music in school was mandatory. And so fewer and fewer people have a connection to anything except just what's most immediate. And just as an artist, I would not be the first nor the last to find a more comfortable home in Europe and in places where art has a different level of appreciation.
La seconda domanda, the second question was about the lineup of your upcoming tour in Europe.
He asked a question about playing in Milano.
And when you will be back live in Italy as well.
Yes, this is in the works. Now, we wanted to start off doing some other places in Europe first. But what we're planning also to do is to find some place here in Milano to put together something where we can invite everyone to come from Europe, because Milano is not some place that you have to twist people's arm to get them to come. So this is ultimately what I would like to do, is set up an environment where we're there for a while and we can really stretch out and present so much of what we've been able to achieve in all of these years.
Like your residency.
Yes, residency, yes.
So we wait, and then because we're talking, ci sono altre domande?
Sì.
Okay.
Scusa, la line-up del
La
Ah,
line-up,
sì.
sì, the musicians, just you.
We've worked with
How many
some
people?
musicians. The ones that will be touring with me, they originate from Varese, and we've called them the Sugar Plum Pharaohs. And as they were last time, they will be accompanying me again. And right now they are already in rehearsals and preparing for these dates that we have committed ourselves to.
But is Sananda playing the keyboard and the guitar according to the songs? Then there is a drummer, bass player, keyboard player, guitar player, and a
Oh, I see.
vocalist.
I missed this
The
part.
answer.
I only work with them. I only have the privilege of working with them when we're touring.
Sì, perché non suonano il disco ovviamente, perché tutte le canzoni rock, all the rock songs, Sananda plays
Well,
by
I always play
himself.
everything by
Yes.
myself. So all the stuff that was
So they
Funny
only
you say,
commit themselves when
all
he
the
goes
stuff,
on
the
tour.
orchestra stuff and the string quartet stuff, but it's not like everything else.
Oh, we
does.
forgot to say, last thing about the record, that in the there are two volumes. Volume 1, Pegasus and the Swan. Now if I don't do a mess, I open so you can see.
And most of the orchestral.
And I want to tell you that in Volume 2 there are 4 songs that were co-written. There are 4 important collaborations. Shall we mention? Yes, we
in the course of, but what I'm really proud of is that all of my projects before I suggest to the art director what I'm looking for, I tell him I'm looking for, and we then collaborate from that point onwards. But this one I decided I just wanted to do it myself, and there was no reason why I was not able to with the tools that are now available creatively. So
You became also a designer.
I became a designer. And
because you were doing as many things already. But you did a great job. E c'è anche un bellissimo booklet con tutta la genesi del progetto dal caffè con Diego a seguire con i fantastici Alchimia. Una domanda.
Qua, Fabio Ricci, ciao. Una curiosità e una domanda un po' più seria. La curiosità è, chissà quanti ti avranno detto, no, 40 pezzi, too much, ma sei matto, qui fanno EP da 4 pezzi. Non hai 41? Per precisione. Enzo numero 1.
First of all, there's 41 listings, but there's only maybe 30 songs. Everything else is a segue or insert.
See, because you have to listen to the project gapless if you want to listen, obviously, to the beginning to the end.
And my example is two things. One, when you have harvest, how much comes off of the tree? You take everything off the tree because that's what the tree gave, and that's what I'm getting here. But also, people's listening habits have changed so completely since I first started that it's not as if you have the expectation that people always sit down and listen to something from top to bottom. They tend to take it in parts and pieces. Sometimes they may say, oh, let's listen to the whole thing. But this is not when you would get like stoned and smoke a joint and put on your headphones and listen to Dark Side of the Moon. You know, this is a whole different era. But this is kind of where my approach is. I was very close to the late great Prince, and I decided years ago that I did not want to spend all of my time in the studio. I wanted to also experience life, which for writers is very important. And I didn't want to die with like all this unreleased stuff in the vault and people fighting over it, or oh, we should do this. While I'm here and I have it and I believe it's worthy of my name, I put it together.
Mi ha già risposto. La seconda è un po' più complessa. Prima parlavamo di John Lennon, adesso anche i Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, tutte persone molto impegnate socialmente sulle corporazioni, su dove sta andando questo mondo. Penso adesso anche ai Muse che fanno tante cose impegnate. Quanto come padre, come uomo, si pone questa domanda, cosa posso fare io, e lo posso fare immagino con la musica, per aprire più coscienze possibili.
What can I do as a father and as a musician, as an artist to open up people's consciousness in this world dominated by corporations?
It's simple, but it's complicated, but it's simple. You have to first assume, okay, you have to hypnotize yourself. We're all under a spell. We walk through life under a spell. Question is, whose spell? Generally, our spells are collective. We have a common agreement with what we will call reality. Because the reality is there is no one reality. Everybody is an individual cell that filters life and sees it the way they do according to their experience and so many factors. So, but we agree that there are certain things we will agree on as communities and say, this is our reality. We accept these things, we don't accept these things. So we're under a spell. This is the genius of advertising, is buy this, buy this. I'm under the spell of Steinway. I'm under the spell of Fender guitars. I'm under the spell of my wife and my family. But I'm able to choose which spells I fall under because I have conscious control of my vision. And the most important thing is you have to convince yourself, you have to hypnotize yourself that you have something worthy of being heard. This is the most important part. You can be shit as a musician, but if you can convince yourself that your voice is necessary, that what you're offering is necessary, you will find people who agree, because energy works like this. And it's ultimately, music is just energy. And it's where the energy originates is from how you see yourself. So You have to presume upon yourself an arrogance that I am worthy, what my shit is just as worthy to be heard as anyone else's. It doesn't matter how many other people are doing this. It doesn't matter what corporations are doing. But you also need to take advantage of the fact that if you're not being promoted by corporations, don't confuse your music with corporate music, because the world is not begging for more corporate music. We have enough of that. It's very well represented. People pay attention most when they hear something that captures their attention precisely because it's not what they're usually hearing. And it doesn't matter if they say, oh, what's that, or whatever. It just matters that they notice it. So this is the most important thing. From there you build, from there you grow, and from there the seed that you plant becomes a worthy seed that bears fruit. But you have to convince yourself that nothing else matters except how you see it, how you're doing it. And you have to stay away from conventional wisdom unless you want to do a conventional music. Okay, if you're not doing conventional things, conventional wisdom has nothing to do with you. Create your own laws, create your own rules, and put your balls behind it, and just follow it. Because this is convincing. People are naturally attracted to people who have like the audacity to actually believe that you are just as worthy as being heard as any of these other motherfuckers. That's where we love confidence. We love that vibe. This guy has a vibe. Yeah, but he can barely play. It doesn't matter. The vibe is hitting me. So that's the most important thing. And music is just a vehicle of expression, of how you express yourself. That's all. Your expression is as legitimate as anyone else's. If you don't buy into this and if you don't believe this, none of it matters.
So no labels to define your music?
Excuse me, Mom?
No labels to define your music?
None except the labels that I'm inspired to give it if it's there. I mean, it's just I'm the papa, I get to name the baby.
Posso fare una domanda?
Sì.
Più che altro una curiosità, ho visto che prima ha approcciato benissimo questo magnifico pianoforte. Voglio sapere un po' se lui è autodidatta, ha studiato, tra l'altro si è confrontato anche con esponenti della musica culta, diciamo così. Quando è iniziato, eccetera, eccetera.
A bit more about your approach to music, if you're self-taught,
Yes.
how did you start it, and also you play with the elite of classical music, so they want to know more about how
The
Sananda approached.
the Rolling Stones of string quartets, string quartet.
Che adesso tra poco vi presentiamo.
Yes, I am self-taught. I think a musician's greatest asset is their ears. And if you can hear it, you can figure it out. And, I wanted to study music theory in school, but they didn't want to teach me. So I make up my own music theory. And this is the way, this is where I get eventually your confidence comes in the fact that you're allowed to create your own language. And you're allowed to use it. And so at this point, I'm just very glad that I took the road that I took, because if the music is in you, it's going to find a way to come out. And it doesn't matter if you start at 2 or if you start at 22 or 32. If it's in you and you give it a chance to come out, it's going to come out.
La musica in te comunque esce, anche se non me l'hanno insegnata, me la sono imparata da sola, giusto?
Mm.
Ci sono altre domande? Una domanda?
I'm Matteo. Thank you for having me.
Matteo.
Just invited me. It's not really a question. It's more like a thank you for walking. It's not really a question. It's more a thank you for walking away from everything you've walked away from, which is, most people just dream.
I had some help. It wasn't just walking away, it was kicked up. Oh.
It was pushed away.
Did he jump or was he pushed?
And the second part of the non-question is, thank you for keep making music that is important to you and not just keep making copies of that first album that still, in my lifetime, I think it's the greatest first album that came out in my lifetime.
Yes.
Because you could have just turned yourself
I
into
agree.
your own cover band, you know? How many times can you just play Wishing Well, you know, just, you know, say your name, just once more, once more.
Matteo, I remember Prince, the legendary Prince. I remember him saying to me, I don't envy you, because he said, by the time I, Prince, became a phenomenon, there were steppings, building blocks. Everybody knew I was coming, everybody saw it. Oh, okay, there it is. He said, you, right away, and the way the business and the way the psychology works is, the moment they accept you, this is who you are to them. And because you didn't have steps along the way that they could see, they didn't know what you were building. So they catch you at the very beginning of a process, and then they resent you when you continue to grow past your very beginning. And I've always said, and I've always felt that my first album wasn't my first album. It was the last album I owed from a different time and place. Now, honestly, even at the time, it felt like I was finishing something, not beginning something. For me, the real, true beginning of post-millennium rock, and it's not that I'm not proud of that project, I very much am, but for me, the true beginnings of post-millennium rock was Neither Fish Nor Flesh, when we started saying, okay, it's if we had paid back a debt with the hard line, as if we paid a debt and realized, okay, we're now free. And it was just a very interesting time, because it was also the fact that between my first and second projects, virtually CBS Columbia was in the process of becoming Sony, Sony International. And relative to Sony, Columbia was a more artist-friendly company. If you had earned their trust as an artist, they let you get on with it. And they would then put what energy behind you they felt they could to do justice to your project. Sony, in that era, of course it's a different world now, of course, but in that era of Sony, the Tommy Mottola era, or you guys would say Mottola, it was no, we don't listen to artists, they listen to us. It was a very top-down way of operating, and there were a lot of us artists that just didn't fit that template. I just, like, trust me, okay? Just let me do what I do, let me create my magic, and let me, no, it was too, and so there was a lot of resistance to continuing as I had begun, where they just let you continue to reinvent and write yourself, because like you said, this is what they would have preferred, is that keep repeating the formula. And my formula is no formula. It's just trust the inspiration and follow it. Follow it. And so it was just, but it was emblematic because the 90s is when the industry fell apart as we know it. And that's because as more and more corporate entities, larger corporate entities, saw what Sony was doing, and they said, we got to have a piece of that as well. They brought with them the attitude that I personally witnessed, that we're going to move this guy over from the automotive division, because they had record profits last year. He's going to run the record company. Oh, wait a second. What does this guy have to do with artists? Music is music. It's no different from selling bread. It's no different from selling cars. It's just a product. And this mentality is what began to kill the baby in the bathtub. And now we're in this completely wild, wild west situation where the great Sean Parker came along with Napster, and when he came along, that's when I realized, that's my way out. That's my way out. I see it now. So
You were one of the first to use the internet. I remember you put
Yes.
Wildcard for free, downloadable.
Time was a very important factor. Timing was a very important factor. But I do want to shout out Sean Parker, because that was when we started to realize that there was a new game in town, and it was going to dramatically change everything. And I was just fortunate that I had achieved a level of success right away that left a lot of the rest of pursuing, the idea of pursuing more and more and more fame. I saw that the situation that I was in, I was only going to be allowed to do that if I allowed them to control my identity as an artist. And I'm just not wired that way. It's not about being stubborn. That's just not who the fuck I am. And the mismanagement of assets is what killed the industry in their time, because you're taking thoroughbred horses and you're trying to turn them into farm animals.
And it's a bit
And you're taking farm animals and you're trying to turn them into thoroughbred horses. So it was just a mismanagement of assets that didn't work out for a lot of us.
This concludes what you said before, that music then has the power to change the world and to also express yourself without any label, any boundary, and
except those that we feel comfortable giving it. But it's just such a powerful force, and this is why there has always been. Let's not just act like this. Corporations controlling music is different. Before it was the corporations, it was the church and the nobles, the noble families. They controlled it. You still had to have somebody sponsor Beethoven, or someone had to pay for these compositions that Mozart was creating. One of the most powerful things I've ever read, because these are also my great, for me, Mozart and Beethoven and Bach, these people are the evidence that there is a God, as far as I'm concerned. Because the music they make is so otherworldly that it leads you to understand there is more than just this physical level of existence. But the last year of Mozart's life, he had finally gotten assigned to a church in Vienna, which would not tax him to do anything but create maybe a couple of masses a year, and would allow him to create, with all the time he wanted, his own work. For someone like Mozart to have said, I'm so excited because now I get to finally do the music that I want to make. You think, and you listen to the magic flute and the absolute perfection of this, and you think, my God, what is going to happen when he finally gets turned loose? We never got to know that. And that was a part of his deathbed confession, apparently, was that he made this comment. Or that the last quote of Haydn was, wow, I was just finally learning how to write for horns. This is just the power of it, and the fact that it's always under someone's control. And this is why being an artist in these times is such a unique time to be able to present what you want to present and what you feel that represents the truth of what's inside you.
ultimately it's freedom,
Sorry,
Yes.
quickly. Have you just a good relationship with these songs, with the first songs? Oh no.
Yes,
Or not?
but I had to transit. I had to go through. Those songs changed my life forever. And anything that changes your life forever is going to have some resentment. You're going to have some resentment because when you're dreaming, you only see the dream. You don't see the taxes of the dream. You don't see the price of the dream. And then when you realize that the price of that dream was almost losing your life and losing everything that mattered to you, and realizing what kind of person you were and what kind of person you were not. That experience produced years of bitterness, especially because the record was so powerful that fucked people up. And now they were trying to figure out how to contain me more and how do we use his gift as a magician for our benefit, our purpose, and stop him from kind of confusing the situation, because part of what they are responsible for is maintaining control of the spell that we all collectively agree to participate in. And so if they feel that there is someone capable of another kind of spell, particularly if that person is the kind of person that promotes the idea that how you feel and how you think is important, and it doesn't have to always be suppressed for the good of other people's comfort level. It creates a bit of a problem. And they may even love your music or your work, but they fear you they fear your influence. So unless they believe they can co-opt you and bring you into their situation, they will gladly use your power for the mutual benefit. But if they're not sure that you care how they're using your power, then they tend to stay away from you. But all of those things, all it did was wake me up. Because when I started dreaming, the world that I became awake in did not exist yet.
Yes.
Once it did exist, I realized that as painful as that shit was, and it was incredibly painful, this was the purpose, was to convince me that the longer you stay in here, the more you're going to lose what it is that makes you unique. So if this matters to you, get out now and never look back. So consequently, it took me a long time to dissociate myself with the traumas of those songs and to come back and hear them in a way that others hear them now who are affected by those songs. So, and that's probably a greater connection for me, is not only the songs, but the fact that to someone else, that song represented their first kiss. You know, I've had people come up to me and say that the first time I met Miles Davis, the great Miles Davis, I said to him, do you know, because I'm also a big Frank Sinatra fan, and in his generation, Frank and Miles had a great admiration for one another, but they were the two alpha males of their era. They were the two guys that everybody else wanted to be like these guys. And I said to Miles, I said, do you realize how many people you and Frank have put on the earth? How many people would not exist if it wasn't for a Frank Sinatra record? How many people only exist because their mother or father was hearing Kind of Blue or whatever, they were in the right mood, and then life happens. That the music has the magic to create more life. And he looked at me strange like, this kid thinks too much. You know what I mean? But then it happened to me. It happened to me that all of a sudden you start to run into people that tell you that your music is what motivated their parents to procreate, to create them. And then that's when the connection you have to those songs comes back to you through the people that those songs have affected. Okay, one of the scariest, funniest things that's ever happened to me, I was in Amsterdam signing some autographs in a record store. And there was this long line, and there was the girl who finally came in front, lovely young lady. She said to me, I just want you to know that you were my first sexual experience at the age of 12. And I was like, until I met my wife, I was never attracted to younger women anyway. And I'm like, oh my God, wait, I don't remember, oh, who is this person? She saw the panic on my face. And she said, no, I'm sorry. I was sitting with my mother in front of the TV in 1987. And you came on the television, and this was my first experience of sexuality. And it was so funny that the next 2 or 3 people in the line behind her started laughing as well. It's like I couldn't wait to get out of it. But so this is ultimately, this for me, a song is okay, wonderful, cool. Now the next one, I'm picking fruit, and now.
It's also important to say that you never listen to until you have to perform, and obviously Sananda will be performing a blend of all of his projects since the very beginning in the upcoming tour. So this is the one who knows. Yes, in the meantime, if the Archimia can come in, because we have talked a lot, but it's true that you never listen back to your songs.
I'm just obsessed with what's next. And
never look back.
I don't think it's time to look back yet. So yes, I'm just interested in what's next, and I'm just grateful for my work ethic. I'm grateful that I come from people for whom work was a very important part of our existence, and I've never lost this connection. How important is the work to maintaining our spiritual, emotional, and psychological balance and equilibrium? Because if I'm not working, I'm just fucking with something in my head, and I'm going nuts.
Or buying guitars, so it's better you work.
Yes.
Allora, diamo il benvenuto all'alchimista.